you are more than just your wealth. And so it's having your wealth work for you and achieving whatever those goals are for you to achieve. And it's not just the accumulation of more stuff, but it's about experiences.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Build to Billions podcast, where we got successful entrepreneurs and investors on the journey from millions to billions. We believe the key to scaling your wealth and compounding every single day starts with the mindset and practice of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire biblical principles. Our ultimate goal is to help you scale and compound your wealth in life so you can give more all of it away to help MVPs. I'm your host today, Brett Swarts. In every episode, we're joined by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, millionaires, and billionaires, where they share their secrets, wisdom, and thoughts with us so we can all level up and make a bigger impact. I'm excited about our next guest. He's a first-generation Greek American and a 2023-24 Forbes Best in State Top Next Gen Wealth Advisor, serving as the financial guru behind 2 Wealth. As a University of Central Florida alum and avid football fan, he brings a unique perspective to the world of personal finance. Alongside his roles as a devoted husband and father, he's a certified financial planner and holds the following advanced credentials: CPA, CPWA, AAMS, CR. He's really, really smart when it comes to retirement, finance, and so much more. Please welcome to the show with me, Mr. George Stefanou. George, how are we doing?
Good, Brad. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Yeah, so by trade, I'm a financial advisor, certified financial planner, professional, etc. All those alphabet soup after my name that you mentioned, but really here to talk a bit about my book, 2 Wealth, really to really discover and help those to navigate the world of finance post-exit, post-accumulation. And now that you have, a 2 Wealth, what do you do with it? What's next? So many books out there about how to achieve it. Not much about, what's next after that.
What would you say is the number one biggest dream or biggest goal that you find for those that you help post exit? Like, what are they really trying to achieve? Why are they exiting in the first place? And what are they trying to achieve?
Hopefully they've worked with, certified exit planners. They've worked with consultants. They've worked with professionals, even like you, Brett, in having a strategy on what's next ahead of time. I'm here in Florida, and there was a recent study that just came out that even businesses, when they go to market, I think it was 79 or 80% of those that are listed don't even sell, right? So a lot of the times maybe it's a fire sale, it's a forced exit. Everyone will exit their business because everyone's going to exit this system of things one way or another, right? So you don't want it to be a forced exit as a result of a death or a sickness, an illness, those kind of things. And so really planning that and kind of building with a mentality of exit. So, that word exit sounds so terrible to a lot of people, but the reality is it's good business planning, it's good exit planning. And so kind of going into that mindset from the get-go.
Okay, so that sounds like something to avoid, like the mistake to avoid. Make sure you have the proper mindset. You're doing the strategy and the planning. But I'm curious, like, what is the thing that they, like they sit down and they go, George, I just really want this. Like, what do they want the outcome to be? What does their dream post-exit look like?
A lot of the times I want me and my family to be okay. It really boils down to that simple principle there at the end of the day. They want to make sure that then their kids, their grandkids are okay. And that's different definitions for different people as to what that okay looks like. But they want to have that feeling that's there. And often people, when they enter retirement or they go to the exit their business, it's they're stressed out, or it's they're running from something. But really, the goal that we try to work with clients, and really the book subject matter for readers is rediscovering self and what are you running towards, and kind of going into that mindset. And so that's what people are really looking for. Am I going to be okay, or is my family going to be okay?
Okay, excellent, great. Well, so dive right into the book. So it's called 2 Wealth, right? 2 Wealth. Tell us more about the top secret to building 2 Wealth, and what, if someone picks up the book, what's one of the top takeaways they're going to get?
Yeah, I think, so it's a personal finance book, but really it's written in an approachable manner, right? So it talks a bit about my own dad's journey as an immigrant from Greece, coming over and building his own 2 Wealth. He did do it through real estate, like a lot of the things that you talked about in your podcast, Brett. But talking a little bit more about, okay, that this is more than just your identity. Many people identify with their businesses, et cetera, but um, you are more than just your wealth. And so it's having your wealth work for you and achieving whatever those goals are for you to achieve. And it's not just the accumulation of more stuff, but it's about experiences. It's about, having your money work for you at the end of the day and not just you work for it. And so helping kind of discover that, and then also the common pitfalls along the way, right? So it talks, we talk about in the book, you know, many business owners, they know their business, they know if they pour money back into their own business, what they can get out of it, but they confuse sometimes business with investment. And so sometimes for me, an investment is something that's more passive, right? So if you have a business, you have a job and you're in it, and your time and your expertise are your most valuable assets. And so as a result, yeah, you'd expect a higher return. And so for my dad's case, right, in residential real estate investment, I talk about the stories about the idea that, he talks about the returns, but it's not the return on investment, it's the return on current value, right? So, you may have gotten a great real estate deal back in the day, but a lot of that growth has come, the last few years, several years spent obviously in the asset, actually the value going up itself. And so it's not just on the return that you first paid for it, but what's it worth today? What could that same investment do if you did diversify it? And how much is that worth to you not to have the phone calls or the liabilities or whatever it may be?
I think that's just spot on, right? And by the way, if you want to learn more about George and everything that he's doing and how he can help you, go to 2commawealth.com. That's 2commawealth.com. Check out his book. I call this, George, truly passive income. And the way that we frame this is that truly passive income is to your freedom and impact as compounding interest is to your money. And when you focus like a laser on that number, it's 10,000, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 per month, different for every family, right? And you focus like a laser on achieving that, where we call it, finally getting to the fourth quadrant of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad book, right? And you're right, you're not trading with time, talents, treasure. And well, in this sense, you are investing it, right? So you're giving up the opportunity cost, but you're not having to exchange yourself physically, right, or mentally, emotionally focused on this thing that's producing you the income. It changes everything. And you move from a ROI, a return on investment, to an ROI, a return on impact. You move to a point where you get this more margin and this momentum gets moving forward. But yet too often I think owners are stuck in the business that they don't want to let go, or they're stuck in the real estate that, you're right, it's gone so much higher in value, but they're not saying, well, if you harvest that and replant it, the cash flow could just, solve what you want, right? And so walk us through the best ways, and any thoughts you have on the truly passive income thought, but also walk us through the best ways of durable, consistent cash flow that you're able to build for your clients.
Yeah, so we talk a bunch about it in the book, right? And I've had it with discussions of my own father, not just clients. So I'll focus on my dad for a second. When I asked him, I was like, with all this real estate that he's accumulated, it's great, it's cash flowing, all that kind of stuff. It's not what some podcasts would call, mailbox money, because it's like you said, there's a lot of involvement, a lot of stress. That he goes through in handling it. And a lot of it actually falls on my sister, who helps him with operations day to day with it all. And that's a whole other dynamic that causes her stress in helping the family out from that perspective. But the reality is, for him, it's an identity kind of crisis, right? So if he doesn't do that, what am I going to do all day? So he's got to develop hobbies, etc. His running joke is, "Am I just going to sit around all day and look at your mother?" kind of thing. And, for some, they're wildly in love. They still are, but they got their own definition of it, right? So that's that. But for us, it's funny. Everybody's talking right now, for instance, about AI and what's this going to do to jobs and capacity and all that kind of stuff. And the same thing happened in the Industrial Revolution when there was quotes of people saying, the work week's going to go down to 10 hours. What are we going to do with all of our time? But instead, what we've seen inherent in this country is just this work ethic, this grind, especially about those that we're talking to, that listen to your podcast, that have that entrepreneurial mindset and that spirit. The bad part is, so we have all this technology. We have a supercomputer right here, which is great. And I can make a ton of money in my business and help make impact on clients and all those kind of great things. But this stupid thing goes with me everywhere I go. And with this it's an anchor, and I'm holding my cell phone here, that my kids resent. right? Because that can go with us to the beach, and that means that I'm not really at the beach. And so the freeness of actually having your money work for you, that you're not tied, you're not drained mentally, you're not having this focus that's been shifted away from being where your feet are and being truly present, is really, invaluable. And so the people with the most money in the world, if they, if it was Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, whatever, on their, on their dying deathbed, said, hey, if we could get another year back with our kids, or what would they spend for that? They'd give it all away. So why are we giving it away now, basically for free, or just one extra turn, or whatever it may be, from that mindset? So helping them see that, and then finding what is your return, what do you need to do that 10, 20, $30,000 a month, whatever your what am I going to be okay number, and benchmark to that and within your risk level, as opposed to just the S&P 500, just some correlated index or whatever, some made up thing, to benchmark against. What's your personal benchmark to achieve that, and then a level of risk you're okay with doing. And you can achieve that through a diversified portfolio of quality companies. You can do it through different, I mean, there's a plethora of investments out there. So we don't say one and done. We talk about the investment lanes in the book, and where that might, what risk categories that's in, and what you're comfortable with. But hopefully that helps answer your question. And I know
It really does. That's really great, George. The one thought is, it sounds like you're really saying don't trade what's profitable for what's priceless. But it's not so easy, right? Because your dad and all of us, right, are, it's, in Americans, male or female, our identities are so ingrained on what we do and what we achieve, and what we've studied in college, and what what we love to do. We still love it, right, in a lot of ways. And so it's not so easy, right? I'm working through a thing called 100X with a gentleman named Lloyd Reeb, and he wrote a book with Bob, I think it's Bob Buford, called Halftime, and it talks about like what do you do in the second half, and the unique experiences you've had these first 40 years is kind of the thought. You could have halftime at any point, but kind of 40 years, and then how can you make a unique contribution the next 40, and the whole idea of moving from warrior to king to sage, and just that whole concept. It's hard because you don't see a lot of people doing it, right? Like, you don't see a lot of people modeling it, is what I'm saying, right? And so you go, yeah, your dad's right. Like, he's being honest. Like, what am I gonna do? Sit around and look at your mom all day? Like, not that that's like a bad thing, but like, maybe it is. Maybe she wants him, to go work and go do something else too. So it's not just like him saying, "Oh, I just want to keep working." So it's not an easy shift of identity. What has been the clients that you've served, and those who have shifted the identity? What's been the most practical advice that you can give to us to help us through that?
Yeah, we did a few things over the years. You have clients that have transitioned well into, say, retirement, and kind of being somewhat of a life coach in doing so. You see a lot of certified exit planners, a lot of value advisors, are former business owners that have already done an exit or two. The vast majority are ones like that, because they understand all the emotion that went through it, as well as the pitfalls and things to kind of look at as they're going through deals. But I really think just sitting down with them and going through. So what I use is I sit down with folks and ask them some typical questions. Yeah, you're going to get your risk tolerance score like every financial advisor out there, all that kind of stuff, those questionnaires. But really, what does money mean to you? And then really, what are your needs? What are your wants? And what are your wishes? So I have plenty of clients with a lot of wealth, and I talk about it in the book. I talk about a story of there's a couple who came to see me who had a sizable just CD product that came due, and they just had it, and they were looking for a new interest rate, and they wanted to put it in. And I just asked them, so what's the purpose for these dollars? And they had no purpose for it. Make more money? That was really kind of it. And so I said, well, if you had to spend the money, if you were forced to spend the money, it was use it or lose it, what would you spend it on? And it was like I awakened a whole new person for them. They just kind of looked at her, they thought. And the wife mentioned a wedding of a niece or great niece of theirs in Mexico, a destination wedding that they just they're more apprehensive about spending money. They're very frugal people, and so they never go on an international trip. They hadn't been on one. And with their age, like So, anyways, we talked through. Okay, what is the cost? You can more than afford it. You can go business class. You can go first class. Heck, if you want to do all these things. And then he piped up and said, I'd really like a transatlantic, train ride. I read about these, and I think that'd be comfortable in a way to see. Never mentioned it to his wife. Like, we all of a sudden started unpacking simply through these, just a series of questions, what would have easily been for a typical financial advisor an easy, okay, well, we can sell you a CD or an annuity or buy some stock with it or whatever it may be. It was really going through all of that. And I found myself to be more of a travel agent at the end of it, because it's really the life coach there. And I think that's really the aspect through all of them. And you see that I have spouses all the time where one spouse wants the other one to retire, because you have something in retirement planning, for instance, it's called, you have your go-go years, your slow-go years, and your no-go years. Those are coming. So it's not that we can defer forever and say, you know what, down the road, I'm going to finally get to my bucket list. We may not be able to be afforded that opportunity. You can afford it now. And so sometimes it's going through the exercise of your advisor, knowing that you're going to be okay, run the numbers, do all the math, do all that kind of stuff, but then do the life coaching behind it to actually fulfill those values. And a lot of it's giving back. I have clients that, work at, the Ronald McDonald House, that they give back at their places of faith, of course, that just sponsor family trips and family reunions and all those kind of things. And then I have ones who, they just want to be around people still. And I got, people with millions of dollars who work at the Lowe's Home and Garden Center. That they just want to be in gardening, they like people, et cetera. Or there'll be a greeter at the local theme parks in Orlando, where I'm at. Those kind of things, because they want to be out. That's what brings them joy, not because they need the money, but it's things that they find fulfillment in. I mean, we started the podcast the same way everybody else does when they meet another person. Hey, what's your name? And then what do you do for work? Those are, back-to-back questions, but really what we want to do is take the time, tell me about your family, tell me about this, tell me that, which on a surface level is very, creepy, as the kids would say. But the truth is, that's where you get to really know the inner person and what's important to them. So that discovery is important in allowing them the permission to spend, that internal permission to spend, to enjoy it and go pursue it.
So good. George Stefanou, everybody. It's Stefanou. And you can find him by going to twocommonwealth.com, twocommonwealth.com. You're going to want to pick up his book. And the reason is it's Amazon list best-selling book, new releases in wealth management. And it's going to be thoughtful. It's going to be practical. It's also going to be personal, because he's part of his dad's story and his story and wealth. And I think just based upon this interview, I'm certainly going to pick it up and think through these questions, right? What brings you joy, right? What matters to you the most right now? And how can you build your wealth in a way which can unlock what matters for you the most? And it's different for everybody. But if you take in a little bit of intentional time and energy, you can unlock those things. Is what George is telling us about here. Yeah, I love it, George. I think that's a great answer. So now let's shift a little bit to capital gains tax. We mentioned a little bit beforehand, right? You might have some business owners that are exiting a $5 or $10 or $15 million asset and might have some challenges with capital gains taxes. What's the approach there when you have a client who might ask you about a new strategy or ideas for strategies, and being that your lane is financial planning, but you bring in or walk us through that mindset and that thought, and maybe we can discourse, talk about some ideas with people here.
Yeah, and I've listened to some of your podcasts, Brett, and I think what you do is highly valuable. And I think all financial advisors, a good financial advisor will do this, is kind of quarterback a network of professionals that you need in order to accomplish it. If you don't do it yourself, right? We don't do, tax advice here. With what I do professionally, we don't do estate planning directly, but we work with those professionals in order to coordinate that. And so coming through, realizing what's taxed, whether it's an asset sale, whether it's a stock sale, making sure that you're familiar with the disposition of the asset, how it's going to be taxed for you, and then how whether to defer that tax, how to realize it, and have a full and holistic plan in it. So hopefully we're coming in during that part or before, well in advance, so that those structures can be set up. If somebody comes to me after the fact, then that's a whole other ball of wax, and unfortunately that happens a lot too. So planning is important. It's And if, you can have a CPA, but if your CPA doesn't specialize in this, you have to have a specialist that's a CPA that does specialize in this, an attorney that does, a financial advisor that does. So I talk a lot about that CPA designation. It's not the end all be all, but at least they'll be familiar with some of those kind of things that are out there in pursuing that. So our approach is have the valuations done, realize what you're coming up against, what's going to be your basis, where are you at with it. And when I talk about the distribution phase of life, I mean, the reality is life is different for business owners afterwards, right? So a lot of the times they ran a lot of their expenses through the business. They have no concept of truly what their home budget is, because everything's kind of convoluted between the business and personal. So how do we kind of structure that out? What do you have when you send it out? Taxes are probably going to be your biggest bill a single line item in retirement. So how can you mitigate that? How can you keep it as low as possible and efficient? And I think some of the things that you do with your trusts, et cetera, are a big component of that, and a consideration that everybody should at least think through.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm always, we work with advisors like you across the country too, right? To help to manage the capital. And it's always interesting to hear, right? The perspective of someone who's professional like yourself. I like the way you say it. You got to really look at, what are we solving for? Like the big tax pain, like what is the problem? Is it big enough to warrant the deferral or the planning and all of the extra complexities? B, do you have the right team in place, right? Your CPA may or may not be the specialist, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you replace them for everything, but for this particular exit, let's take your biggest exit maybe in your lifetime. Let's bring in an extra specialist, beyond just the traditional CPA who may not have this expertise. And then I think the other thing is like, always starting with like the number one thing that you're trying to achieve. And if it's back to that truly passive income, to say, well, what an extra 20, 30, or 40% of proceeds working for you, compounding in a way for generations to come, how could that help you reach your goal faster? And you might say, well, then I can sell the real estate today. I don't have to wait another 5 years, right? I could sell the business today because, wow, I thought my after-tax dollars would be 20 or 25% less or 30% less. So now I can sell. Now I get back time, which is the most precious commodity, right? We can't ever get that back. So yeah, that's I think that's a great way. Any other thoughts on that, George?
No, I think you're spot on with it. And then even post all of that, how to structure any of the investments that you have afterwards, recognizing really just how the tax code works. That a lot of times it's not assets that are taxed, it's the income. And so how do you structure that income to ensure that it's favorably treated, and then tax laws change all the time. So it's not hey, we're going to put a plan in place and then that's it. You'll never hear from these professionals. You got to have people that you're going to partner with ongoing, because things will change. We're going through a big tax law change right now. We'll see what stays, what goes. And that's going to change, every year, every 2 years, as there's shifts in Congress, as there's shifts in, inflationary adjustments and rates. So keeping your finger to the pulse with all that, and yet you need to enjoy your life, right? So we just talked about the idea, if you're going to trade your business and sell it for an asset, but if you've created more complexity and now you're involved in trying to be in the thick of it all, no, have a good management team, just like you would in your business. Because the truth is, if you have a business in which you can't fully walk away from for a month or two and come back and it's no longer standing, you don't have a business. I mean, you don't have an investment anyways. It's a giant job of yours is what it is. And same thing with your wealth. Use the team around you to support you in pursuing it, that they can keep abreast of it. You still, it's not set it and forget it completely. You want to be involved, in a post-Bernie Madoff world. You want to make sure you know what your advisor, is doing. But at the same time, you don't want this to be a full-time job either. You're there to reach the goals that you set out to begin with.
Makes sense. Now, if you had to choose one, diversification, liquidity, or timing, what would you choose and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. Diversification, liquidity, or timing. So much of that goes hand in hand with it. I think if you could get the one thing that you can control the least down, which would be the timing. If you have the answer to the timing, then I guess the rest you could figure out afterwards. The timing is always the hardest part.
I could agree more. And then the next thing is, I think the 1031 exchange has been overhyped and overused. especially for baby boomers who are in real estate. And by the way, I started out thinking that 1031 was the end all be all, oh, this is the best way to grow wealth and banging the drum, stepped up basis, just, da, da, da. And I go, man, so many people have gotten hurt, and they're getting hurt right now again after they overpaid a couple of years ago. Now interest rates have gone up. They don't have liquidity. They don't have diversification, and they certainly don't have timing. So, what are your thoughts on the 1031 exchange, and what's some maybe some wisdom for those that are considering, and maybe they shouldn't?
Yeah, I think that many people live by the idea of a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush, and so they nobody wants to pay a tax bill, and so the idea of deferring, regardless, and people you see it with traditional investing, so 401k, everybody goes, tends to go pre-tax rather than Roth or any of those kind of things along the way. And so we saw, I think, that with 1031, because it was an easy, okay, I understand real estate, I'll, identify this other property, I'm going to, swap this out, or the business, whatever it may be. And the reality is it's more complex like that. Like you said, you're in a situation perhaps now that you're regretting that decision, and you don't want that. I don't give tax advice, directly with it. I don't know the direction of where the real estate markets are going to go from here, but the reality is, I think there's pros and cons with everything. It's to make sure you understand what you're doing, and that you have a good surrounding of fiduciary acting, best interest acting advisors around you, and that you understand truly what you're doing and the trade-offs involved in every transaction.
Very well said. And by the way, if you do want to learn how to have, I think, two birds in the hand and maybe even snow in the bush, you can use our strategy, which eliminates the need for the 1031 exchange and allows you to diversify the wealth, have liquidity, have timing on your side, and it's great. It works for business sales, Bitcoin sales, real estate, stock sales. And you can do this by building a capital gains tax exit plan. You go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to get started. We routinely save 1031 exchanges, and we help you get it off the 1031 merry-go-round sometimes, which can be very frustrating. And we typically increase cash flow, and then definitely decrease the stress that's tied with toilets, trash, and termites, and all of the above. Go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. All right, that being said, George, you ready for the lightning round?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, knowing what you know now, if you go back to your 20-year-old self, what's the one gold nugget make sure you tell yourself to do?
Spend more time with my kids, for sure.
Excellent. Question number 2, what's the number one book you've recommended the most in the past year?
Probably The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel.
Excellent. And question number 3, number one way you're using ChatGPT?
Yeah, ironically, nothing to do with any of this. We're using it little by little. And professionally, the firm's starting to roll out. We don't have it quite launched yet, but I would say the most recent way that I've been using it is my wife and I have been going through, before we go to the grocery store, just loading up everything that's in the fridge now and coming up with creative solutions on how to meal prep for the week.
Excellent. Number one thing you're most curious about right now?
Where the country's headed, and where people, how to get people working together again, I would say.
Excellent. Last question. How do you best practice stewardship mindset over ownership? And what's something that you're really passionate about to give back?
Yeah, I think thinking of others, the golden rule, leading with EQ, not just IQ, to stop, think, pray, listen, that whole mantra is something that's important. And that's something that I hope that I'm always working on, and I think we all should do a better job of.
Awesome. George, I want to thank you for the show, man. This has been great. I'm excited to pick up your book, and thank you. I want to encourage you to keep being the thoughtful leader that you are to help your clients create and preserve more wealth through making sound, wise investment decisions, financial decisions, and to be thoughtful with their exits, right? I mean, this is so big, and it's so needed with the 84 to 100 trillion transfer in the next 15 years by the baby boomers. Folks that need guidance and help with their stewardship of their capital. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, George, could you remind them one last time what's the best place for them to find you?
Probably right there on the website. 2commonwealth.com has all our contact info. There's a contact submission form there with links to the book, and you can follow where it's at and any accolades or any experiences that we have along the way. So really appreciate you, Brett. Appreciate what you're doing for the industry too, and for clients. And thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, George. Also want to thank all of our listeners for listening or watching another episode of the Build It to Billions podcast and or Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. This is where we're streaming and releasing. We're on this journey with you to scale from millions to billions. So we give more, all of it away. And we encourage you to practice a mindset of stewardship over ownership and also applying a lot of the wisdom that George just talked about today. Please take action. Please share, rate, review, subscribe with this with somebody. And also, we're adding one more thing to our show. Every single day, we're talking about living a life without regrets. And the number one thing that we want to encourage you to do today is having the courage to live authentically instead of meeting others' expectations. What is the one big thing that you might be holding back? Don't hold back. Don't wait. We're studying the top regrets of people that express at their deathbeds, and this is one of the number ones that's number one overlooked. So have the courage, live authentically instead of meeting others' expectations today. And other than that, make it an amazing day. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.